Welcome back, dear viewers. You're still watching Nile Cruise on Nile TV International. In this segment, dear viewers, we have with us, we know that the COVID-19 pandemic is affecting all our lives in many ways. It is clear that while the COVID-19 pandemic is touching every one of us, the burdens of this crisis are not shared equally. The equality and diversity implications are very real in both our personal lives and also our professional opportunities. Longer research and writing times in the social sciences suggested that the impacts of COVID-19 on publishing many remain invisible for some months. The world of publishing has been affected by the pandemic, especially in academic journal. And in this context, dear viewers, we have with us a very special guest, which is Farah Rasmy, and she's going to be telling us more about all the hurdles and challenges that are facing that are facing us in light of the COVID-19. A very good day, Farah, and it's
Hi.
a pleasure to have you with us in today's
It's all my
episode
pleasure.
of
Thank you
Nile
very much.
Cruise. Of course, it's a very special day. It's of course, Cairo International Book Fair, and its 52nd session. And I want to start asking you, you are an editor in the Arab Media and Society, which is primary resource for media research in the region.
Yeah.
The journal, published biannual online and in print, offers peer reviewing research and analysis on a wide array of topics. Did the topics of research and the pace of publishing differ due to the pandemic?
They didn't exactly differ. It actually gave us an opportunity to talk specifically on what's been happening in the world, especially in the Arab world in the pandemic. So we've recently had issues on media and science, and then media and health. We're working on the media and health issue right now. And we received a lot of research from the Arab world around the effect of the pandemic on social media, on media in general, on academics. There's been a lot of research being done around this topic, and in that way we've been truly keeping up with the times, trying to publish the most recent research on the pandemic.
Okay, of course, the pandemic must have dominated your research topics in your journal.
Truly.
How did you observe that?
All academia has been affected by the pandemic. There's not really a sector in academia that hasn't been affected in terms of grabbing the intellectual attention of a lot of academics. So whether it's in politics or media, researchers are looking at how this halt in the world has affected our lives in all aspects of it. So whether it's in media, how the media has had to transform and deal with the speed of the events that had been taking place, the idea that there wasn't a lot of information, a lot of it was inaccurate. All these aspects had to be followed and criticized and analyzed in academic research. So we've had people from all over the world specifically interested in how the Arab world has dealt with it. And so we've had a flood of articles on it, and we've even had articles coming from Malaysia about the Arab world, and it's been really, really interesting receiving these papers.
Farah, you discussed the Arab world in general. Talk to me about Egypt specifically, especially Egypt, because Egypt handled the pandemic in a really different and really successful way.
There's been specific research on Egypt and how the youth had adapted to the COVID-19 pandemic. There's been research on how the media handled the topic in Egypt and how they were able to cover different aspects of news throughout the lockdown and afterwards. We actually had the third Arab Science Journalism Forum last week, and we had journalists from all over Egypt and even cinematographers talking about how they had to cover health and science during the pandemic. So people had to learn to adapt to new technologies in Egypt, and that was the biggest thing, where like a huge sector of society has had to stay at home as they did everywhere else in the world. But because we were fortunate enough to have the rules a bit more relaxed, we didn't have to suffer as much mentally, and we were able to adapt to the changing circumstances a lot easier than a lot of other countries, which shows in the data as well.
Okay. Of course, the pandemic must have dominated your researches in the journal, and the Arab Media Society website procedures and diverse content examining media and life in the Arab region. This includes reporting, analysis, interviews, reviews of books, conferences, and films, of course, a podcast, and more. Tell us more about that.
So, Arab Media and Society is mainly an academic journal where we've been recognized internationally as a Q2 journal in literature and communication, in a lot of different aspects of media studies. But we also publish interviews, as you've mentioned, reviews of books that came out. We're just about to publish a review on the most recent handbook on Arab media. So that is a really good piece of scholarship that covers all countries of the Arab world with the exception of two countries. But they did like every chapter covers a country, or like even some countries like Egypt got 3 chapters. So we're just about to publish a review on that, which is very interesting. It's the first of its kind. So this is a huge step for media in the region. And we're also working on launching our podcast again, which will cover contemporary Egypt and the handbook on Arab media. So we're working on that. We've also been publishing interviews with a lot of scholars around the world. So we've had Rami Khouri from Lebanon, I believe. We've been publishing our newsletter, which also has a section which has an Ask the Experts section. So we talk to scholars from all over the world about whatever topic is meaningful in those 2 weeks. We've talked about the Capitol attack earlier this year. We've talked about Palestine. We've talked about a lot of different topics that affect our region one way or another. We've interviewed Dr. Sahar Khamis about politics and how they affect Arabs in the United States. So we covered diaspora as well. That's kind of what we've been doing. And definitely the pandemic has been a huge part of it, just by virtue of it being a huge part of our lives.
Okay, the journal has operated as a hybrid publication. Did this help the journal to survive in times of the pandemic?
Yes. So our journal is a bilingual journal, and it is
English
also
and Arabic,
it's
or?
English and Arabic, and it allows for publication online and in print. So most of our work is online, which has made us capable of just continuing our work normally. And the idea that we've been a bilingual journal since 2016 has also allowed us to get very unique perspectives that are lacking in the world in general from Arab scholars. So we get research from Algeria, from Saudi Arabia, from Yemen, from everywhere, truly everywhere in the Arab world, anywhere that speaks Arabic, which is something that has been lacking in academia in general. So since we're recognized internationally, we accept Arabic publications, and now we're working on translating all our Arabic publications into English. It allows for our citation rates to go up. We have over 5,000 citations around the world in academia. So it's been truly a successful enterprise, just because we have that unique aspect that isn't available everywhere in the Arab world.
Wonderful. Did the pandemic have any positive effects on the research and the online publishing in our world?
It's been positive in the sense that there's a lot of new ideas that are coming out. A lot of people have time to do the research, but there's also limitations because a lot of our research usually relies on field research. The human perspective of our research is very important. So the idea that scholars couldn't travel, couldn't necessarily conduct one-on-one research, semi-formal interviews in general, that's a bit limiting. So a lot of scholars have had to rely on surveys, questionnaires online and things like that. So that's a bit limiting. But in terms of just the host of ideas that came out of it has been very positive. Just a lot of people are looking at even academia in general in a new way.
Okay. Do you expect printing books and journals to survive in the coming years?
This is a big debate in general, and there's been strides to digitalize everything, and I think it's still going to remain important to have the hybrid model in terms of like having print, because a lot of people, as we see here, very clearly still love having a physical book to read. I personally have a lot of books, ebooks, and then the same exact copy in print, just because it's what avid readers usually like. So journals tend to have them in print in general around the world, which is a very useful thing, especially for scholars who read all the time. You get very exhausted from the screen eventually, but it's practical to have it everywhere as well online, right? But I do think that digitalizing is gonna take a whole other world in the
Yes.
coming years.
Why do you think that digitizing is going to take us to another different level where TV is not going to be very important? Many things are not going to be as important as digital life.
I think that the idea is the physicality of the TV might not be like having a physical like TV cable channel might not be as important, but the idea of having reliable reporters, good media outlets, people you can trust, this is something that's going to be a lot more important in the coming years just because the last few years trust has been eroded. A lot of people don't know who to trust anymore. So if media outlets, digital journalism takes a more focused step on digitalizing and going onto the internet and finding creative ways of monetizing it in order to have like trustworthy news and like good pieces of media, we're gonna be okay. It's just the idea that we have to be very creative. We have to be creative because people are really like they're hungry for actual truth. So it's just up to us to actually be able to provide it as opposed to just give up on television as a concept at least.
Okay, as a lover of reading, what are your reading preferences and how do you see the Cairo International Book Fair in its 52nd session?
Quite frankly, I was super impressed. The fair is incredible. There's people from publishers from all over the world. There's publishers from the Arab world in general. There's publishers from like Eritrea even. Like I was extremely fascinated by that. This was my first time actually being able to come physically, and this was quite incredible. We're midweek, midday, and there's a lot of people, and it's extremely crowded. So that was really nice as a reader to see how many readers there are in the world, because we're always told that there aren't, or there's less. And I think it's just because readers tend to be the quieter ones. It's not because they're lacking. So,
Farah
yeah.
Rasmy, editor of Arab Media and Society Journal, the AFC.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us
Thank
in
you.
today's
It was my
episode of
pleasure.
Nile Cruise, and thank you very much for your informative knowledge and a wonderful interview that added a lot to our episode. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Dear viewers, stay with us. We'll be back again.